and Igor will do his best to run over those for you. So please feel free to register your questions as they come up, and Emma will work with us to ensure that they get answered. So, a little bit about Kiandra. If we can flick over to the next slide, please, Igor. That will refresh. Oh, the agenda. Yes. So Kiandra is a 19-year-old IT and software development company in Victoria. I joined Kiandra 3.5 years ago, and having first touched K2 in its workflow capacity in 2007, I introduced K2 to Kiandra, and we haven't looked back since. We like K2 because we were predominantly a .NET shop who were doing some SharePoint, and it suited us at that time. And with the introduction of K2 Smartforms over 2 years ago, we've had accelerated engagement with our clients. Obviously, the news about Infopath has really spurred things on for us. So we work across government, FMCG, not-for-profit, corporate, in what Microsoft would call the mid-market, and also in the upper area. We have 100 happy clients or more, and we are nominated in Microsoft Awards, and we have also the ARN Awards and a number of other awards that we've gone for. And also we have all the partnerships you'd expect of Cisco, IBM, HP, K2 being the most important, and also all the Microsoft competencies for software development. This morning's interest for us is really about how we can help you have forms anywhere, anytime. And that's the engagement message that we have with our clients, that forms don't have to be something that are difficult to get up in a business anymore or difficult to get on your website. The platform engages across mobile, and at Kiandra we have a mobile-first approach to everything that we develop. So on that note, I'll probably hand over to Igor to take us through the next 35 minutes, and then we'll come back and go through your questions. Thank you. Igor.
Thanks. Can you hear me okay? We'll just get a sign of life from anyone that can hear me.
You're a little bit quiet.
Okay. Is that a bit better?
That's much better.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, thanks, Paul. Let me go to the next slide. So what I'm going to do is just take you through a little bit of positioning. A lot of people come to us about, having been existing Infopath clients who've been using Infopath, some customers of ours. There's a lot of anxiety about what do they do now. All right. So I'm going to just take you through a little bit of positioning, a little bit of what K2 is all about, and we'll also do some live demo, and I'll try to keep it as interactive as I can. All right. So when we think about SharePoint, and when we talk to our customers, there's really two areas that we see where people want to interact with forms and process on top of SharePoint. One is the first area on the left-hand side is really all about everything and anything inside of SharePoint. So doing things inside of SharePoint, and then the other side to that is doing things outside of SharePoint that interact with SharePoint. So if we drill into the first one a little bit more, what we typically see, first of all, is workflow requirement. That is, needing to be able to just automate things. And not necessarily using specific forms, that's just being able to automate a document library, or a new policy gets uploaded to SharePoint and reading that around for approval, and where the standard SharePoint kind of lists and forms that are already in SharePoint will do. The next area that we see is around creating forms on top of those SharePoint artifacts inside of SharePoint. And that's the most popular, the most common use case that we see today. And that's where we've got a very compelling offering. And it's pretty much what people using Infopath for before, was being able to go and put Infopath on top of their data sitting inside of SharePoint. So within this area over here, it's also being able to then integrate with line of business data. So we might have a backend SAP system or CRM system, and then being able to bring that information into that SharePoint environment and expose it inside there. The third area is around creating applications that sit outside of SharePoint and that may or may not interact with SharePoint. So if you think about mobile applications that are sitting outside, maybe applications that are sitting in other line of business systems that then maybe pull information from SharePoint. So think about those sort of requirements where you want to expose a mobile application to somebody, and they're interacting, clicking on drop-downs, but those drop-downs are populated from a SharePoint list. Where that also comes in quite interesting is where we have customers that have multiple SharePoint farms and multiple different SharePoint versions within an organization. So if you think about this third area, it's really treating SharePoint as a line of business system, but where SharePoint might still be the front end. So if you think about somebody, let's say, coming into a SharePoint 2013 site or an Office 365 site, interacting with some information or a form sitting inside there, but that form is actually the data behind that form is coming through from maybe some on-premise data, some maybe SharePoint 2007 or SharePoint 2010 data that's then coming through and then being populated onto that person's Office 365 environment. So there we're using SharePoint in sort of the middle term where we've got forms and workflow data sitting in SharePoint, but also SharePoint as a backend coming maybe from some legacy SharePoint backend systems that haven't been upgraded that need to continue to exist and live as they are today. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do now is just to keep it interactive and get a bit of understanding of the audience. So we're going to run a quick poll. So I encourage you to participate in the poll. Let me just get that started. So the first one is your primary forms needs, and let me launch that poll. Okay. Right. So the poll's in progress there. This is it's a multi-choice answer. So if you can just just have a look, read the question there. What is your primary forms needs? Is it just within inside of SharePoint putting forms on SharePoint lists and libraries? Is it being able to put it in with bringing in line of business data into a SharePoint environment? Is it then using outside of SharePoint and bringing that information to those different areas? So and it's multi-choice, so it's starting to get a bit of an idea of what the results are. The results are coming in there. It's quite interesting to watch the results change as people are casting their votes. So at the moment, it looks like a lot of pretty much everyone's needing that SharePoint list and libraries, being able to put stuff inside there. Second place is coming in at being able to integrate that with line of business data, and pretty much everybody has said that they want to be able to expose that on mobile devices. So mobile device being quite definitely on everybody's need list. Okay, and then 33% is around interacting with that data outside of SharePoint as well. All right, so let me close that poll. All right, there we go. Hopefully you've got my slides back again. It's the first time I'm using this poll mechanism myself. So if you think about those results, there's a number of reasons why Infopath, the announcements around Infopath. So Microsoft, when they released SharePoint 2013, the writing was pretty much on the wall. If you think about the release of SharePoint 2013, we were all quite excited to see what updates would be inside of Infopath, and there were pretty much none. And at that point in time, I think most people sort of got an idea that not much updates going on in Infopath, or that doesn't really show much of a roadmap for what's going on inside there. So the writing was really on the wall. And then soon after that, the official announcement came out in the form of this blog, where Microsoft was actually announcing the retirement of Infopath. So there were a few reasons why they cited this. The one was around trends that are in the industry, and the real key thing that on this abstract from the blog was being able to create forms that span multiple devices. So if I think about those results of the poll we had a little bit earlier, that was the number one. Everybody clicked on the mobile requirement over there. The other area there was being able to be quite flexible with connecting your forms with data and with processes. So that was also one of the main reasons. So with that, they actually specified that this is the last release of SharePoint 2013. But for the Infopath, but for those customers that currently have quite a big investment in them, and which Katie also does, that it'll be continued to support until 2023. So a lot of our customers are today using K2 with Infopath, and we will also continue to support Infopath up to SharePoint 2010. But going into the future, going to SharePoint 2013 and beyond, we'll be then investing inside of the K2 Smartforms technology. All right. So a little bit about some of the announcements that were made at the conference. So this is at the Vegas conference in the SharePoint 2014 conference in Vegas. And there was a lot of noise, about, Infopath being retired. What is the Swarm strategy for the information worker? And Microsoft announced a couple of options that people have. The first was the use of Excel surveys, so also known as FOSS. So this is forms on spreadsheets. You currently have it today in SharePoint 2013. I've had to play with this. This allows you to take an Excel spreadsheet, create almost like a question answer, and then people can answer those questions, and then it updates that Excel spreadsheet. So, it's not really a great forms story, but, if you've got a requirement to populate and gather some data, I guess you can take advantage of that. The next area was list forms, so Fossil. So these are the forms on SharePoint lists, and this is the area there that we believe Microsoft is going forward with. So we think most of the development and work is going to be done on the Fossil side, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. The others was around structured data. So this is being able to, use Word as a mechanism of exposing forms, and inside there you can use content types and things like that as well. So, again, the problem with that though is the data is pretty much stored inside of that Word document. The other area was around app forms. So this is really around using access forms within other SharePoint, and you can do some interesting things with there. But again, it lacks a lot of kind of the complex functionality that people were used to inside of Infopath. Being able to hide and show sections, being able to do some validation and things like that. Right. So the timeline around those, the Excel surveys one that you have already today, the lists, the Fossil, they spoke about that being on SharePoint V next, and for Office 365, we should start to see some of that coming out probably this year, more likely into next year. The messaging around the structured documents were that they'll be working with the Word team to define a roadmap around that, and the app forms around Excel, that's available today. So a lot of it was stuff we're working in, needing feedback on. The message wasn't as clear as a lot of people would have hoped it to be. If you take a little bit deeper dive into Fossil, this is the sort of announcement they gave about the sort of 3 to 6 month period, the kind of functionality they're going to expose, cascading combo boxes and, interacting with the standard SharePoint workflows. And then the rest of the roadmap is going to be based upon feedback. So they've asked people to give them feedback about so that they can start to prioritize, which sort of rules and logic and kind of functionality they should start to prioritize around that. So still quite a lot of early days development around that, and we should start to see some of that stuff coming out as the years go by. Right, so what I'm going to do now, though, is let's move on to K2 a little bit, and I'm just going to kick off another little poll and just get an idea on who of you know K2 already. So I'm just going to start that off, and it's just a one answer poll this time, so I can get an idea of who I'm talking to and what you know about K2 up until now. So if you wouldn't mind answering that poll as well for me, so I can get an idea of who's seen K2 before and or even worked with K2. Right, I can see it's coming in. Okay, all right, brilliant. So some people have seen the demo, some people have heard of K2 but have not seen it, and no one on the course worked with it. So I've got really a bunch of new people to K2. So let's go in and go a little bit deeper into the K2 world. All right. Okay. So K2's been around for quite a while. I've been with K2 since 2003, and one of the very first things that I did was work on Infopath. So I think I wrote some of the very first integrations with Infopath and some of the help manuals when I was working in our labs team. We were also then a part of the original SharePoint Office launch event. So Microsoft had a massive launch of Office 2003, a global launch, and K2 was a co-presenter where we presented integration and use of Infopath. So it was pretty big. We've probably done more with Infopath than anybody else over the years, and hence we were part of that launch event. I think I remember one of the launch events I presented at. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was at the tail end of a keynote, and I ended up presenting to about 3,000 people. K2's integration with Infopath. So I was pretty nervous for that one. So the community around K2, we've got lots of customers on Infopath. We've done a lot of work with Infopath, and the point I'm trying to make across here is that we understand Infopath. We understand what our customers and people that have been using Infopath need in Infopath, and we understand where a lot of the gaps were. Here's a couple of screenshots. This is a very old screenshot of our previous K2 technology, that one that we released with the launch party, and you can see a little process, and there's a couple of steps over here that touch on and integrate with different steps inside of Infopath. Okay, so if you think about some of the design principles that we had around K2 Smartforms when we developed it, we started developing on, we noticed the gaps that were there around Infopath. We started to make a good headway and started to work on this quite a few years ago. And some of the things that we had there was, having a browser-based design and runtime environment, being able to integrate with line of business data, not having to worry whether you have to design something differently if you're going to do something on-premise or in the cloud or on a single form, or where you want to use that form. We wanted to have a scenario where you can build a form once and you can use it in multiple different places and not have to recreate it every time. And what we also wanted to do was support not only SharePoint, but being able to support the exposing of these forms in other applications as well, such as CRM, maybe Salesforce, Dynamics, and even standalone web applications. A number of other things that came into that was being HTML5 based, so that we could support cross-platform, so we could have the modern browsers, and then being able to put forms and workflow and connect all those together. So if you think about those, and you go back to those original quotes from Microsoft, these really gave us a good sense of quantity and validation of what K2 has done on their platform. So you think about Microsoft retiring Infopath for these reasons, and these were the exact reasons that we built our K2 Smartforms technology. All right, so let's move on to that. So that is a K2 Smartform, right? And I'll show you a good demo of that a little bit later. So it's nice, it's web-based. You can start to create a form out of different views, and those views can actually interact with different data. So if you look at this form over here, this form is showing information, a little section coming from SharePoint, maybe some account details coming out of an SAP system, and maybe the list of customers coming out of a CRM system. So on this single form, it's showing you all this information from all these different systems, and nobody has to know necessarily where that information is coming from when they build that form. You can then take that form and you can start to expose it into different applications. What K2 is also doing is it's making a huge investment in its own technology on top of Smartforms as well. So what you'll notice is a lot of the tooling that comes out from K2, a lot of the out-of-the-box stuff that you use to build and to use K2 is actually built on Smartforms itself. So that's a great use of our own technology that we're building K2 on top of K2 Smartforms as well. So we talk about the K2 platform, right? So K2 isn't just forms. K2 is a platform in which you can implement forms, workflows, reporting, and integration to data. So that's, today we're going to focus on forms, and you can use any combination of this. So you could use K2 for workflows on data or forms on data and don't have to take advantage of the workflow, or you can use forms, workflow, and data, and then obviously plug reports to be able to go report against what's happening inside of your processes. So the key message here is that it's not just a form. So quite often organizations come and they say, oh, our initial requirement is just a form. We just need a form to capture some data. Well, as that matures, and you start to think, oh, what do we now want to do with that data? Once that data has been captured, we now want to maybe send it for approvals, or maybe we want to write it into a few different systems, and quite often process comes into it. Now, the nice thing about the K2 platform is that this is all built by K2. We haven't acquired a forms technology and tried to plug it into our workflow technology and a third-party reports technology. Everything is built organically from K2, so everything integrates very well with each other. The workflow understands the forms, forms understand the workflow. They both understand how to interact with the data. So it's a very seamless way of being able to mature in your organization as your requirements grow as well. Right, so drilling down into the Smartforms a little bit further, what they're going to be able to do is, and I'll show you a bit more of this, is it's going to give you a drag and drop web-based form design. Behind that, you can configure business rules, hide and show certain areas based upon maybe who's logged in, maybe based upon what somebody's typed in, maybe show another tab. You can do pretty advanced rules that sit behind that. You can then integrate with data, so you can integrate with data in your organization, or even data that sits outside of your organization, and then expose those forms where you need them. And then you can tie those up to workflow or not. So you don't have to take advantage of the workflow capability. You can totally use your forms on workflow. We have a customer that originally approached K2 in the UK. It was guys in St. Thomas Hospital. What they were looking at doing was replacing all of the bed charts in a hospital with digital forms. So they weren't really even interested in the workflow, but initially they just said, oh, that's all we need to do. We've got 800 forms in which we want to replace. And what they loved about K2, if I go back to this previous screen, what they loved about K2 is that when you build a form out of these different views, all right? So what that means is that they could build a patient view, all right? And then they could use that patient view, which pretty much sits on all 800 forms. So what that means is that they didn't have to build 800 forms. They worked out that they need to create really 300 different views. And of those views, they are able to then plug together those 800 different forms. So if, for example, in this example, the account manager, or in their example, the patient details changed and they needed to add some more information about a patient, they just added it to the single view, and all of the forms that are using it would be updated and pick up that change. So that's an example of a customer that really took K2 initially as just a forms technology, not necessarily for the workflow capability at the beginning. So once you build these forms, you can then go and expose them. They generate HTML5, and you can go and expose those onto different devices, so from Androids to Apple to whatever is going to support that HTML5 standard. So therefore, it's going to give you that cross device capability. This is an example here of a K2 Smartform sitting inside a SharePoint 2013. What we can see in this example is I'm having a look at a new order over here. It's also bringing through some data out of CRM, and it's bringing some data order items that are coming out of a SQL Server backend. So that is a SharePoint site, but with a K2 Smartform inside that, which I'll show you in a few minutes as well. Here's another example. This is Dynamics CRM, and what you're having a look at over here, that is a K2 Smartform sitting inside of Dynamics CRM that's showing information that's integrated into SAP. So somebody in here is logging into CRM and they're seeing this SAP data coming to a Smartform. And that exact same Smartform can be put inside of SharePoint if you want to as well. Here's another example. This is one sitting inside of Salesforce.com, and this is a little view of some quote information. This one on the left-hand side, this is actually based upon a SharePoint list. So when people fill out this quote details over here and they save it, it actually saves this. This is connected to a SharePoint list and saves that data into that SharePoint list. All right, so enough PowerPoint for now. Let's go on and build a bit of a demo and show you a little bit of what it's like to use the K2 technology. Right, so let me switch over. Make sure everyone else is still okay. All right, let's get my demo up and running. Okay, so this is my VM. What we've got inside here, so this is a SharePoint 2013 site. So everything that, the way K2's built K2 Smartforms and our integration with SharePoint 2013 is that we have done it exactly the same for Office 365 and for SharePoint 2013. So we've got feature parity between the two. So there's no such thing as, can I do that in SharePoint on Office 365, but I can't do it in SharePoint 2013. Everything that I do here, you'll be able to do in either or all of those environments, or even a combination. So you could have a single K2 server that services your Office 365 environment, that services your online on-premise environment, and even forms that you build on-premise, you can then go and expose those into your Office 365 environment if you want to as well. So you can do that as well. Okay. So what we're going to have a look here is just a quick little example. What happens is, if I go to this little playground environment that I've got here, I've got a little customer inquiry SharePoint list. So this is a standard SharePoint list. So what we're going to do here is it's got a customer name, a contact, a date, a description, a little mobile. So just maybe somewhere where someone can log an inquiry of a customer that might have come in, and you just want to be able to log that. If I click on new item, so the standard SharePoint, that is the standard SharePoint list coming inside here where I can go and type in some values. Now the problem here is that I can come in here and I need to type in a customer, and maybe it's an existing customer. I have to get the spelling right. I might not know what their name is, and I've forgotten who the contacts are with inside there. So there's a couple of things that we could probably improve on by having this little view inside of SharePoint integrated with some line of business data. And maybe when I'm also choosing the customer, knowing more about that particular customer might be useful as well. Right. So how we do that is that K2's got a little app part. It's using the app model that you install into your SharePoint environment. We don't actually touch SharePoint until you install the app, and we don't install anything on your SharePoint environment. And that's how we're able to provide that parity between Office 365 and your on-premise. So it's quite nice that we don't actually touch your SharePoint. We never modify anything inside there. You just install the app model through that mechanism, and you're on your way. So with inside here, I'm just going to go to list, and we have a little K2 application button that appears here now. Now what that enables us to do is when I click on it, it's going to get K2 to interrogate that document library, and it's going to give us a couple of options. It's going to say, what do we want to do with this customer inquiry SharePoint list? So I can say, well, first of all, I want to create a K2 Smart Object. What this does is this enables that SharePoint list to be exposed to K2 as a Smart Object. And a Smart Object is a mechanism that we expose back in data. So I could now just decide what I want to do is that customer inquiry, expose it as a Smart Object data, and then I can build another form somewhere else and look up values from this customer inquiry list and expose those on other forms or even into third-party applications. The next thing I want to do is decide, well, I also want to build a form on top of that. So that'll automatically then go and create the Smart Object, but then build forms around that data for me. I could decide I want to build processes, and I could decide I also want to build reports against that. So I'm just going to do the data and the forms to start off with, and let that generate. So that probably takes about 30 seconds or so to do all that work behind the scenes for me. All right, so while that's running, I'll probably just explain a couple other things. The nice thing about a Smart Object as well is that you can connect other things behind Smart Objects, not only just data. So, for example, I could go and write a bit of .NET code, for example, that might do some sort of complex calculation or piece of functionality, and then I can wrap that behind a Smart Object. I can point to a web service, a complex type web service or a simple type web service, and I can automatically generate smart objects out of that particular web service. And once something is a smart object, it means that I can then go and use it inside of my forms, inside of different environments. So it's not only, smart objects are not just around exposing of data. You can also expose complex calculations and functionality, and that's quite a nice way of being able to extend the K2 platform. All right, so that's done that for me. It's generated a smart object out of the customer inquiry and the attachments, because SharePoint list can have attachments. It's built a view for each of the states that it could be in and a form for each of those as well. And I can reuse those in other places. So let me open up another little browser window. Let's close these two off over here. All right. And show you what's changed. So if I go back into SharePoint, go back to the customer inquiry list, and then click on new item, what you're looking at now, this is now a K2 Smart Form. So it's already done all that work. It's already replaced that form inside of SharePoint as a K2 Smart Form, and this now gives us the ability to go and do some fancy things with it. Okay, so let's go and make a couple of changes first. Let's go back into the little view. So this is the K2 Smart Form editor sitting inside of your SharePoint environment. The first thing I'm going to do is go and modify the new custom inquiry view. Let's go and check that out. So we could check in and out. Multiple people could be working on this at the same time, and let's edit that view. Okay. So there's the view showed up for me, and you can see now I can start to go and make some modifications and changes to that, move things around. The first thing I'm going to do over here is the customer name. What I want to do is I want that to come up. I want that data to be selectable from my backend CRM system. So what I'm going to do there is go and change the customer name to a little drop-down list box. Okay, so it's a little drop-down list box now. Now I'm going to go and tell it where it gets its actual data from. So I'm going to say, you get your data from a smart object. So everything becomes a smart object in K2. This time I've got a line of business system over here. I've got a couple of smart objects connected to some line of business data. I've got some connected to some SAP information, and I've got some connected to some CRM data. So let's go to my CRM data. I'm going to go to my CRM account summary. Now that's going to bring back a list of CRM accounts, and you can see I've got all the fields now coming from my CRM system, and I can select which fields are displayed and shown. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, is just simply select that. All right. Then what I want to do is, when you choose a customer, customers have got different contacts. So I want to populate the second one. Let's also turn that into a drop-down with a list of contacts for that particular customer. So this is going to be an example of a cascading drop-down. So let's go now connect that up to my CRM system as well. So let's go to my line of business system, to my CRM, but this time to my CRM contact. All right, so the value that's going to be stored, I want to store the person's full name. So there's their full name. And what I want it to be displayed, so when somebody sees on the screen, I also want to display the person's full name inside here as well. So you can see I could mix up and make a combination of these different values. Let's find EF. There we go, full name. Let's drop that inside there. Okay. Now what I can do is I can tell it to filter the data according to another controlled value. So what I'm going to do here is select the customer name and specify that it's going to be filtered on the account ID. Let's have a look if I've got that right. Okay. All right, so those are the first little things. So let's save that and have a look at the change that's made so far. So if I now go back into this custom inquiry and I click on new item inside here, what we'll see there is some things have changed. You'll notice customer name is now populated. Those are fields that are coming out of my CRM system. If I choose Adventure Works, the second little one populated, and that's brought Nancy. And that data there is actually coming out of my CRM system. And what's also quite nice is that we can make these things asynchronously look up. So if you notice, whenever I'm changing these, I don't have to, the whole screen's currently not blocked. You know, it's loading this little second drop down asynchronously. And you can go and specify the way that you want these different things to load up. So that's the first little thing. So that's quite nice. Quite quickly, I've got that ability to have, you know, that value stored inside there. So I'll just put a little title here. Let's call that demo. Put a little date pickers come up. First try, I'll call that one. Maybe I can put a little mobile number in there and hit save. And what we can see sitting inside of that SharePoint list is that data that's come out of my dynamic CRM system. And of course, that could come from a SAP system or some other systems as well. All right. So let's go back inside there. That's great, but maybe I want to do a little bit more with that. You know, so saving that particular custom details is great, but maybe I want to go and when somebody selects a particular customer, maybe I want to show them a little bit more information about that customer. So what I'm going to do here is, let me just check that in. I'm going to go to the new customer inquiry form. Okay, so this time to the actual form. Let's check that out and edit it. All right, so let's edit that. Okay. So what we're looking at here is a form with the two views. It's got the view that we just modified, and we can see the drop downs that we changed sitting inside there. And then it's got this little attachment section, and that's where you can attach documents. So what I'm going to do is, let's get rid of that. So let's say on this particular view, we don't need to worry about attachments. But what we do want to do is that when you choose a particular customer, I want to show details of that particular customer. So this is a great ability that K2's got of the reuse of views. So I've got a view that I've created before. So let's go and find that under my line of business system over here in CRM. Here's a view called CRM Account Detail Summary. All right. So, or even this one, Account Details. So if I take advantage of that one, drop that onto the screen over here, what you'll see is that little view's loaded up. Okay, and it's got already some information going on inside here. So let's call this CRM details. Now what I want to do is that I want this view to load up its details out of the CRM system when you actually select a particular customer. All right. So I can now intercept when this customer name has changed. So let's go and do that. Well, actually, hold on a second. I want to use a different view. Let's use this view over here. Yeah, that's the one. That's my one. So let's call this CRM details. Okay. So I'm going to intercept when this customer name has changed. So on my rules, you can see a lot of rules that have already been written for me. Now what happens is, as I'm dragging and dropping and doing things, K2 is automatically writing rules that tell the form how to interact and how the functionality works. But what's really nice about that is that because they're exposed to me, I can actually go to them now and I can modify and interact with them. So here's a rule that says when the customer's drop-down list has changed, which is going to populate the contact details, I can intercept that, edit it, and now I can add onto it. So on the view, this rule is taking place, and I'm now going to go and extend it and tell it to, well, when that happens, I also want you to go to my CRM account detail summary and execute the initialize method, and that takes in some parameters. The parameter that takes in is either account name or an account ID. So the account ID in CRM is a funny GUID, or the account name is the actual name of the account. So I might not always have the GUID, I might just have the name. In that case, this is what I've got. So on my new customer inquiry, go to my controls, go and get the customer name drop-down list box, and let's pass that inside there. And that's all I need to do. Let's finish that and save it. All right. So let's go back and see what we've done. So let me check that in. Okay, so let's open that up. Customer inquiry. Let's hit new item this time around. This time around, my little views opened up. You can see I've got a little side panel of CRM details. And now when I go and choose AdventureWorks, what's happening there is it's loaded the contacts, but it's also loaded AdventureWorks details out of my CRM system. And this particular view that we've got has even got a little update button that allows me to go inside here and actually do an update and update and modify my CRM system. And of course, I could maybe not have the update button. In this view, I've just put the yellow field as the one that you could update. All right. What this view has also got is a little quote history. If I click on a little quote history, it's automatically got a sub view that opened up and showing me previous quotes for that particular customer. And I can see we've had 2 quotes that have gone out. I can click on the little view flow over here. That brings me the process that a particular quote went through. So I can get more information about that and see sort of all the bottlenecks and the things that have taken place in that particular process, if there was one associated with it. Or if I double click on the view, hopefully I'm not going too fast to seeing the refresh rate. If I double click on it here, that's now opening up a little Smartform that's showing me the details of the quote that actually went out, so I can get an idea of what's happened. So quite quickly, we had a little SharePoint list. Just by adding a little bit of functionality, adding another view that's got some effort and work that's been done previously, I can repurpose it and use it inside of this particular view quite quickly. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do now is get you guys to interact a little bit more. It's nice having this inside of SharePoint, and that was in the poll, that was one of the main things that people were talking about, was being able to, inside of SharePoint, create forms out of SharePoint lists and libraries, and then being able to bring in line of business data. So that's the first 2 kind of areas that we covered up here. So let's go now a little bit outside of SharePoint. So what I'm going to do here is go into the K2 workspace, not the workspace, sorry, the K2 Designer outside of my SharePoint environment. And what we're going to do is go to that SharePoint library that we just created. I can see I'm running out of time a little bit, but I'll hurry up a little bit. So under our sites, under our playground, under our lists, there is our customer inquiry one that we're busy working on now. What I'm going to do is go to our new customer inquiry form. So that's a form that we have sitting inside of SharePoint. And what I want to do is I want to create an external version of this. So I'm going to save as, I'm going to call it new customer inquiry external. All right, so I'm just going to save it, and what you'll notice is I'm going to reuse the views. So I'm not going to clone the views, just reuse the same views. Okay, so there we go. Now I've got this little external view. Let me go and edit it now. So it's got all the logic we had a little bit earlier, but this time I'm going to rearrange it a little bit. I'm going to put the one under the other one. I'm going to also give this one a little bit of a header and a footer. So let's go to my demos over here, headers. So let's add a little header onto that. make the header non-collapsible. Let's maybe, yeah, I'll just leave the header for now. And what I'll also do is change the styling a little bit. So I don't want it to look like SharePoint. The sort of blue that we and green we got maybe goes better with the sort of different styling applied to it now. And a few other things that we'll change is I'll make this thing stretch out nice and wide, but give it some minimum width and height. So let's make that 300 and 800 pixels. Okay. The other thing that I'm going to do as well is I'm going to make a small change on this one. When you hit the save button, I don't want it to only save it to SharePoint list. I also want it to send back to the mobile number a notification. So I'm now going to interact with some web service inside there as well. So I'm going to intercept the button when the button is clicked. Right. Now what happens here is that it's going to save the data to the SharePoint list, and it's going to navigate to another URL. I'm going to disable that. So I'm overriding the standard behavior of that view. I'm going to add another method to execute a smart object. Smart object that I'm going to execute is under my common. I've got a smart object here that I built against a web service called send a text message. Let's configure that. So while I'm busy using the smart object, I don't have to care about the technology behind it. It needs a mobile number and a message. So let's get the mobile number out of the SharePoint form that we're going to be filling in. So there's a mobile text box. Let's put that in there, and then let's put in maybe the customer name. Has been added, something like that, and I'll just say I'll put demo here for now. So my mouse has just died on me. Here we go, is it back? There we go. No. Okay. All right, so we'll do that. And the last thing I'll do here is call a disable of the form so that they don't maybe hit the save button 3 or 4 times. And I could probably have moved that to the beginning. I'll leave that up for now. All right, so finish. So I'll check that in. Let's have a look at our form. So here's our little form sitting outside of SharePoint. And what I'm going to do now is use one of my smart forms that I've created called a tiny URL generator. So if I put that in there, create an external form of it. All right, so if you guys on the call, if you want to participate, if you type this address into maybe your mobile phone or onto your iPad or Android phone or laptop that you've got sitting over there, so type that address inside there and maybe fill in a couple of details, put your mobile number inside there and see if you can interact with that form that we just put together. And what that'll demonstrate then is that form now working on a mobile device, interacting with our SharePoint. So let's put this onto the side here and see if anybody is managing to interact with that customer inquiry form. Oops, there we go.
Yes, I was just going to ask you to put that back up because we lost the link.
Okay, have you got it?
We can see the link now. And this shouldn't matter whether you've got an Android phone or an iPhone or an iPad or a desktop or a Windows phone. It should all work.
Maybe I've forgotten something and there's an error, but I'll look in the questions and answers a little bit later. Okay, so it's essentially that form is now exposed externally. You can go and put that form in another application if you want to. And when people are interacting with that form, they're actually then going to be writing that data to the SharePoint list. So what's quite nice about that is I can then take that form and I can go and put that form in another SharePoint site or maybe even another SharePoint farm. So that was one of the pains that I used to have with Infopath is that if I built an Infopath form in a specific site collection and then I wanted to use it in another site collection, I couldn't just use that same form. I had to go and pick that up and deploy it again, and then I have 2 forms that I'm busy maintaining instead of just one little sort of source point of the truth that's there. There we go. All right, so we're starting to get a couple coming in, and I'm hoping you're getting some, putting your mobile numbers in there. You should be getting some text messages back about the detail that you just filled in. Okay, so I'm going to leave that off for now. I think I've run out of time, pretty much. And let's go back to the PowerPoint. Right, so just pretty much just to summarize what you've seen, you saw K2 Smartforms, being able to interact with business data, being able to pull that data. So we showed that with bringing in some information from that CRM system and even being able to write back to that CRM system if you need to as well. You can then take that, you can expose that form out onto the internet or into other applications as well, quite seamlessly. And then if you think about your existing Infopath investments that you might have today, come and speak to us as well about that. We've got best practice guides on how you can migrate from Infopath to K2. There isn't a tool as yet, but we do have strategy and guidance and information about how you would think about a K2 implementation, a K2 form solution coming from an Infopath form, and your approach and the way that you should think about it and start to pull certain things out and how you would go about designing a K2 smart form. Okay. All right. So I'm going to hand back over to Phil to just wrap up.
Hey, Igor, thank you very much for a very comprehensive and fast overview of K2, including those two the two voting sessions and that interactive demonstration at the end. I'm hopeful that what people saw today is, forms anywhere, anytime, any device is now, it's not rocket science anymore. It's now a reality that is easily achieved. And certainly the way that K2 engaged and the way we engage with K2 is to go out, establish your K2 setup, leave you in charge to extend it further. And as you also saw, everything that was done here today was done no code. Now, once it's installed and set up, you can achieve probably most of what you want to do no code. And as in Pareto's principle of 80-20, 80% of what you want to do, you'll probably be able to do yourself, and 20% you'll need a bit of help with. And that's why we're here. And we work with K2 with some of K2's clients, and K2 works with us with some of our clients. And we add user experience overlays over this, so it looks very much like the glossy look and feel you might want for an external brand. That's all highly achievable with this as well. So we really have a business productivity suite now on top of the K2 workflow that will provide you a whole new way to onboard people, to do things in your company where you've been moving around pieces of paper in the past. Obviously, that is anywhere where pieces of paper are moving from place to place is a trigger to have a look at what K2 can do for you. So there's a few things. There's a resources page there that we'll send to you. We'll also be in touch afterwards just to see if you have any further questions. And please feel free to email through to K2 on the anz@k2.com or contact Kiandra, and we'll forward that through. What we want you to do is get value out of today. And so we're quite willing to engage with you in a meeting after this to have a bit of a workshop, maybe 2 or 3 hours worth of workshop, to have a look at the things that are arising in your mind as to how you might deploy K2 to solve some business problems in your organisation. So we'll invest in that workshop with you and then be able to tell you and share with you how you would go forward on that, and if it establishes a business case, because it must always do that. So many thanks for your attendance this morning. And I want to thank Igor for his work, and I know Tony Ruppel's been online from K2 as well in the background, and Emma from K2 for setting up the event, and Michelle from Kiandra for working with us as well. So thank you for your time, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Phil.
Igor. Tony.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I just noted a few questions that were logged, so I just want to quickly touch on those. So from Denny, just curious about whether K2 needs to reside in the cloud or in order for it to work on Office 365. So Denny, the way that works is you essentially need a K2 server. That K2 server can be hosted on-premise or in a private cloud environment, and the K2 server will integrate with your SharePoint environment, irrespective of where that environment is, whether it's in Office 365 or an on-premise SharePoint implementation. And we do that integration via the K2 Smart Objects that Igor might have touched on today, as well as our apps for SharePoint. That gives us a lot of architectural advantages, and it means we can go across versions of SharePoint, go across sites, etc. So if you need more information around that, I would be happy to share that with you. Ashish just wants to know what the advantages are between using K2 over a product like Nintex. So products like Nintex are bolt-on products which bolt onto the SharePoint platform. They give you a better workflow design experience, but essentially they're designed specifically to work with the SharePoint environment, meaning they leverage the SharePoint workflow engine, and typically those kinds of solutions expect your data to be you expect your data to reside within SharePoint. So K2 has a different architectural approach. We, first of all, have our own proprietary workflow engine that was built before SharePoint came along. So we are not limited by what SharePoint can or cannot do. And because of our architecture, we can therefore integrate into different versions of SharePoint, and you can also future-proof your SharePoint application for the next version of SharePoint. As you know, Microsoft's got a notorious history for not supporting SharePoint workflows when they upgrade to the next versions. So we can avoid all those kinds of hassles with K2. There's many more benefits that I would love to share with you. I just don't have the time to do it right now.
Next question.
All right. Well, thank you.
That's all. If there's any other questions, we will all be sending you all a follow-up email notification, and we can certainly engage via email and even come and do a custom presentation, as Phil said.
Yeah, every situation is different, but every situation fits K2. So if you can invite us in, we'll map it out, we'll do it on the whiteboard, we'll talk about it, and we'll help you with your business case. So thank you for your time this morning, and I think on that note, there aren't any more questions there, so we'll wrap up.
Thank you for your time, everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Igor. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
No problem. Cheers, bye.